Well, pretty good, pretty good. Reasonably well rested. It's not as hectic as it was in those first months immediately after, particularly the 22nd of February shake, where it all blurs into just one sort of continuum of work and getting up and at a very early hour and going to bed at a really late hour, and just crisis after crisis. Whereas there's a bit more shape in everything now. Joe and I took 3 weeks away back in about the beginning of August, and that was really good for us. Had a good break.
You have a city that's experiencing stress on a day-to-day basis. How can they cope with that when nothing is normal?
Everybody will have their own answers, and I guess the honest answer is not everybody does cope with it, and we've seen a much greater level of stress in families. Some reports of increase in domestic violence in some cases. Probably out there, tragically, there will be additional issues of self-harm. There will be some people who will be probably drinking, maybe drugging a little bit more than they would or perhaps didn't do before. So it will show itself in all sorts of ways. But I think we're probably, if normality is a level of stress about here, normality today is higher, and we just have to learn to some degree to adapt to that. Some do it better than others.
At the time of the earthquake, how did you cope with the 24-hour need to be alert and available?
Well, we have inside us strengths that we don't know we have, I think. And many years ago I learned that when I was taken caving deep into the bowels of the earth, and I was really terrified. And there were a group of experienced cavers with me who would say, well, it's okay, just take a break, you can do this. And I went through these caves, and again we got to the end, and I had to climb up a rope ladder at the end, and I grabbed that rope ladder and I couldn't feel any strength left in my body, and I had to climb 30 feet on a rope ladder, which is very hard. And again, someone just said to me, well, it's okay, Bob, you can do this. Just take your time, take a deep breath, and you can do it. And I did it. And I think, well, that taught me a real lesson, that when you need to have that additional energy and strength, there's a lot you can call on within yourself. I never stopped to think about the hours. There was just a job to be done. You couldn't sleep much at night anyway because the ground was rocking and moving so violently. And but your body and your mind took the space that it needed when it got the chance. And I just did what had to be done. And there was a need to communicate and to explain what was happening, and for calmness we needed to ensure that people were able to be informed without being alarmed. People could see the difficulty and the reality of the situation, and we just needed to be able to assure them that there were thousands of us at that point who were formally charged with responding, and that we were doing everything we could. But miraculously, there were tens of thousands of others who had just decided to become part of the solution. That made it even easier, actually. And even, I was inspired by people.
Did you have any moments of panic?
No. The only time I had a really bad moment, to be really honest, was on the earthquake on the 22nd of February. There was one moment where I really did lose it, right up on the top of the building when the quake had hit, and was thrown around a bit badly. And the moment that sort of slowed down, I was able to stand up, and I looked out over the city, and I could just see this great big ominous cloud of dust rising up from the city wherever I looked, and I knew that meant buildings had collapsed, and I knew from the violence of the shake that there were probably going to be injuries. We didn't know that there would be such a huge loss of life, but it seemed inevitable there would be people in pain as a result of that 25 seconds that I just experienced, and the thought of that overwhelmed me, and the thought that there were people I loved and knew, and they were out there, and I knew it wasn't going to be good news. And that lasted for maybe 2 or 3 seconds. I just sort of, I can't actually remember what I did. I just remember going, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do now? Is this the end of the world? But that passed really quickly, and you just start looking at tasks one at a time. And there's not a problem in the world that can't be solved. And the way you solve it is you take it one step, one moment, one decision, one thought at a time. That is the only way that we can do these things as people. You'd solve the first problem. The first problem was, got to get out of this building, got to make sure my wife is safe and the staff in here get out of the building before you have another bad shake and it perhaps collapses. So you deal with that. And then you're out of the building and you go, okay, well, now we need to know what's happening around the city. We need to get civil defence set up straight away. Who's doing that? Right, let's do that. So you do that one decision, and it's just a series of those events, and you focus on that immediate task and you call on your experience to help you keep making those calls.
You seem an extremely strong person, but there must have been moments of weakness and tearfulness.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think I really cried until we did the memorial service on Hagley Park. I think until then many of us had bottled it up. And I think that was why, even though some people were saying, oh, it's too soon, don't do it, and I felt really strongly from people that I'd been talking to and had seen that there was a real need for us to come together as a community in a structured way to try to understand what we'd gone through. I'm very emotional still about this whole thing. You can't not look at people and not feel emotion. I look at my parents, whom I love deeply, and see what they're going through, and then by virtue of that connection understand what other people in their age group are feeling and how difficult it is for them. I look at my grandkids who were at a school that was subjected to rockfall. Fortunately, no lives were lost there. But then I think of every parent and what they think when their child or their grandchild is at risk and they don't know where they are. I think of what it's like when my partner and I are apart, my wife Jo, and someone whom I love deeply, and I think, well, I don't particularly want her to go too far away. That's why a desk is in the corner over there. So you think about all of those things. It's very hard to judge myself from my own position. I just do what I do, and I try to do it well. I accept that I'm riddled with normality, got as many faults as the next person. I try to improve on those, don't always succeed, but we're all just doing our best.